Welcome to episode 119 of the Charm City Birdwatch podcast. Football is back, and you know who else is back? Jake is back after another long hiatus. We got him back for this week. We're going to recap the Ravens' Week 1 victory over the Browns. Jake might be joining us throughout the NFL season. We'll do some recap episodes here and there. We'll see how our schedule works out, but I don't know. I mean, there's so much to talk about with the NFL season that I feel like we could do like 2 shorter episodes a week for the podcast. Like we could do a recap of the previous game and then like a shorter preview of the upcoming game that releases like a day or two before the game. So we'll figure it out, but I'm not going to waste any more time because there's a lot to get into with this Ravens game. Jake is back, and right off the bat, I want to ask you not necessarily about the Ravens game, but the NFL as a whole. What kind of vibe did you get from the games this weekend? I mean, it was good to have the NFL back, obviously, but no fans in the stands. It's a little bit of a different vibe. How did you feel about this first week?
Well, I want to start off, Nolan, by thanking you for inviting me back to do some Ravens recaps throughout the season. It's good to be back in a limited capacity to be doing some of that. And I know, there's some scheduling stuff that makes it tough on you guys. So I'm happy to help out in any way that I can, and appreciate you, extending your arm out to me and inviting me back. It's good to talk some Ravens again. But yeah, I mean, it was kind of the general gist that I got, not only from what I felt, but from what I was hearing as far as, pundits and fans talking about it. It wasn't too strange like watching on TV. I think they're doing like the wide shots before the plays actually happen. I think they're zooming in a little bit more than what they typically would with the cameras at the stadium, so that you can't really see all the empty seats. Now, obviously, when somebody scores a touchdown and they pan around them, you can see everything. And if there's like a sideline reporter, obviously you see all the empty, chairs there. So really, I mean, from TV, and you add in the crowd noise too, that there some networks are piping in more than others. I mean, it's really not too much different on TV, but I have to tell you, I follow the Ravens on Snapchat, as I'm sure many of the fans do, or on social media. And they put like a lot of their, whether it was their social media people behind the end zone, or, whenever big plays were happening and seeing the touchdowns happening from the stadium, and just there not being any noise at all aside from the sideline. Like that's just got to be, more than any other sport, just so strange for the players. And, we heard Calais Campbell say BYOE, bring your own energy. And for us fans sitting at home, it's not overly different, I guess. I mean, they're doing a good job covering up the fact that nobody's there on TV, but for everybody there, and the reporters were saying it too, like it felt like, I mean, as Belichick said in his post-game presser with one word, it felt like practice. And so, yeah, I mean, TV, not so much, but I'm sure, being there, it's just really weird for the coaches and players and everybody involved with the broadcast and media crews.
Yeah, and for me, I was watching at work, so for the rest of this Orioles season, looks like I'm going to be there on Sundays, kind of like I was last year, but it looks like I'm only going to have to do that for 2 weeks, because then I think the Orioles season will end, unless they go on some crazy run and make the postseason, will end that Sunday right before the Monday night game against the Chiefs. So just this upcoming Sunday, I'll have to watch at work again. But I had the TV on mute, turned the audio on here and there just to hear how it sounded. But for the most part, I was watching on mute and then listening to the Orioles game. Talk about a sensory overload. But to me, in my head, I was just kind of like creating the normal crowd noise in my head. Like I didn't get any awkwardness, but I'm sure later this season it's going to be weirder for me, especially those primetime games. That Monday night one's going to sting, knowing that finally have the Chiefs, finally have Mahomes coming to Baltimore, and there's going to be no fans there. That one's going to sting a little bit, but should be a good game nonetheless. And I'm glad you brought up Calais Campbell there. because I had that same comment written down, the BYOE. I think the team did a great job, at least the Ravens did. You start out week 1 at home. It's awkward not having any fans there, but you still are the home team, so I think it's a little easier to create that energy. You feel comfortable. And I want to give credit to Harbaugh too, and this is something that I found strange, that there were teams out there that weren't doing this the past couple weeks, doing full scrimmage walkthroughs for practice, like simulating a full game, not just 4 quarters, clock all the rules, not just that, but like making the players show up at a certain time. You have to be dressed in your uniform by this time. They did player introductions during practice. Like, they simulated a full game just to make sure these guys were up to speed. And sure, there's veterans that probably don't need that, but especially the rookies, that was very useful for them just to get into the NFL atmosphere. And I was just surprised there were teams out there, I believe the Eagles were one of them, that just did not practice at all in their own stadium. I don't know why you wouldn't do that. So credit to Harbaugh, credit to the coaching staff. I think we knew they would come out prepared, but you look at the end result, it was clear that they were very, very, very much prepared, and significantly more prepared than the Browns.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that Odell Beckham Jr. did not bring his own energy from seeing like his body language like on the sideline. But I mean, to talk about the game, I mean, in general, I know it's 1 week and the Ravens are, Super Bowl favorites, but we've had this discussion, I feel like 5 times now with all the Browns hype every year. And I know it's 1 week and, they might destroy the Bengals on Thursday night for all I know. But like, the Ravens, it really wasn't, fair. I mean, and it wasn't like, the Ravens curb stomped them. I mean, it was pretty tight there until, they kind of came away with it towards the end of the first half, and in the second half they just completely ran away with it. But yeah, I was expecting a much closer game. I mean, and the Browns have played the Ravens very close at M&T Bank Stadium the last few seasons, dating back to 2016 or 2017. Like, they've given the Ravens a run for their money, including beating them last year. That was the last time the Ravens lost. Aside from, in the regular season I'm talking about. I mean, obviously the Titans, playoff loss, but the regular season, that's the last time they lost a regular season game. But yeah, everything, went according to plan. Obviously, they have 2 tough games coming up against Houston and Kansas City. And I'm expecting, them to beat Houston this weekend. I don't know what's going to happen with the Chiefs game, but I agree with you 100% that, it's really unfortunate that there's not going to be any fans for the, the Chiefs game, you let alone the fact that it's a home Monday night game. Big bummer. And, I was even talking to, Tyler about this, one of our other podcast friends of the past. He's a season ticket holder, and I know Ian is too. I don't know how Ian, feels if they're going to eventually let fans in for the second half of the season. I have my doubts personally, but Tyler was saying even if they did let 7,000 to 14,000 fans in, like, the Ravens finally have this exciting offense that they haven't had really. I mean, yes, aside from the Super Bowl run and everything, an offense that's just completely unstoppable, and nobody can go see it for themselves in person. So he was saying that even if a small percentage of the stadium can be filled, he really just isn't interested in going, because he was saying it would just be kind of depressing just kind of watching that Super Bowl caliber team the Ravens have, and there's no atmosphere whatsoever. It feels like just a practice.
Yeah, it was. You watched the Chiefs opener against the Texans, and they had however many fans were let in the stadium, and it looked weird from TV, but then you listen as the game action is going on, and they were getting pretty loud. I mean, it wasn't prime time, what you would expect, but they made some noise, and maybe they were piping in a little bit extra. I don't know what the rules are, but it sounded pretty good for them.
Do you know, by the way, real quick, are they going to keep letting people into the Kansas City, like at Arrowhead, or was that strictly to celebrate the Super Bowl?
I would imagine it's going to continue. I mean, I don't know why they would just bend that for 1 week. I think that's just their state law.
Okay, because I wasn't sure if like they did that to for the first opening game of the season, and I was kind of thinking like if the Ravens were in the same position, I would have a really hard time imagining that they wouldn't let anybody like go, whether it was 5,000 fans even, like go celebrate the Super Bowl championship. Like that would just kind of seem crazy to me. I wasn't sure if that was like a state thing or if the celebration had anything to do with it.
As weird as it is, no fans, all that stuff, as weird of a year as it's been, just so many unusual, crazy twists and turns, unpredictable things. This game very much, it felt like last year. It just felt like exactly like their 12-game win streak last year. They dominated their opponent. The second half was never a doubt, and it was an easy win. So, I mean, you think about last year's run, aside from San Francisco, Buffalo, they never played really any close games. They blew people out. They made it look easy, and this was the same thing. So myself and Ian both predicted a win for the Ravens. I think we probably thought it would be closer, like you said, but in a lot of ways, this was just exactly like last year. And I think a lot of that is the continuity. They didn't lose many big-time players. Marshall Yanda, Earl Thomas are the only major, starters that they lost from last year. But then they add guys like Calais Campbell and Derek Wolfe, and then a whole nother class of rookies. So, and forget the players, the entire coaching staff too. That's even more important. You didn't have any turnover from a coaching standpoint. So, yeah, I mean, it was a great win. Felt like last year. And outside of a few mishaps, which we'll get into, there was a lot to like. And we'll start with the good. So I don't want to put you on the spot, but like what's the first thing that jumps out to you? Player of the game, where do you want to start?
I guess I don't want to be basic here, but I mean, my God, like Lamar Jackson, I don't, like we've said over and over again, over the last year or so, none of us ever expected, this much good out of Jackson. And, going back to some of the stuff of what, I was talking about with Tyra last night, like it is just so nice now. Not to say that Joe Flacco didn't do anything good in his Ravens career. I mean, there was plenty of good seasons and success under Joe Flacco, but you never really felt, aside from the 2012 Super Bowl run, that the Ravens offense with Flacco could just do whatever they wanted to whoever they wanted at any time. I mean, that's everything that we've seen from Jackson and the Ravens offense. Pretty much, the 14 wins last year and, playoff loss aside, that's the thing that sticks out. And I mean, the biggest thing about Jackson, aside from everything he does, his connection with Mark Andrews is it just seems to be like unstoppable. I mean, I don't know how he completed some of those balls to Andrews with like 45 guys around him, including I think the second touchdown he threw. And Andrews bailed him out on the first one too. The first touchdown he threw kind of reminded me of the ball that sailed over Andrews in the playoff game that led to the interception. Obviously, Andrews caught that one, and it was a much better result. And the other one in the playoff game wouldn't have been a touchdown. It was, closer to midfield, I believe, or on the going into, the red zone or just outside of it. But yeah, that's the thing that stands out to me is, we have just an exciting offense to watch. It's among the best in the NFL. And I also, you talk about the beatdown. I mean, that's been a theme too for the last decade or so for the Ravens under John Harbaugh in regular season openers. I mean, 2011, they blow out Pittsburgh. 2012, they blow out Cincinnati. And then After that, they kind of, had a 3-year streak, I think, where they lost in week 1. And then in 2016, everybody was coming back from injuries and they played a really low scoring, tough, grinded out game against the Bills. 2017 was kind of the same way. And then the last 3 seasons, I mean, Buffalo in 2018 at home, last year at Miami, and then this season have all been blowouts. So,
yeah, if there's one thing that you can count on that's going to continue through the season, it's going to be Lamar Jackson. I mean, week 1 it's overreactions every year, both ways. People getting too hyped up, people getting too low, and we'll get into the good and the bad here, but the theme of week 1 every year is just don't overreact. But if there is one thing that you can be confident on this year, especially, I think it's Lamar Jackson. He won the MVP last year. I had no concerns coming into this year. The only question was, can he possibly get better? And maybe a better question is, where can he get better? And I think everyone would immediately say, well, he needs to be a better passer. I thought he was exceptional last year. You want to nitpick and look at the numbers that, he wasn't as great outside the numbers. I thought he was fine. You can say he wasn't great on the deep ball. Again, I thought he was fine. If you're going to win every week by 30 points like they did last year, who cares if he's below average throwing outside the numbers or throwing the deep ball? It has proven to not be a factor all season. So it's never been a big deal to me, but watching him in this one, he had the deep pass to Hollywood. It was great. There was some great sideline passes at the end of the first half, especially in that little 2-minute drill. And that's kind of what I wanted to focus on. I mean, you look at his stat line, 20 for 25, 275 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. That's just the passing. He added 45 rushing yards. It's a great game. We've seen plenty of them from Lamar. It's a great start, but what I was most impressed with was the end of that first half. Prochet, I mean, with a little preview of one of the things I didn't like from this game, he called a fair catch but let the ball bounce instead of catching it. There was no one around him. He should have caught it. Let the ball bounce. It goes all the way down to the 1. And now the Ravens are staring at 99 yards between them and the end zone. And it was never an issue. Lamar just led an exceptional drive. I don't think he had an incomplete pass on that entire drive. They go 99 yards. They get the touchdown. His poise on that drive, just the way he led the offense down the field, amazing. That's the stuff that you see out of Aaron Rodgers, Ben Roethlisberger, the guys that have been around for a decade. They're unflappable. They don't have any issues in the 2-minute drill. And Lamar's already showing you that in year 3 and only year 2 as a starter. Beyond the 99-yard drive, they get the ball back with under a minute or a minute to go, and they go and get another touchdown. That is huge. I mean, they completed so many great passes on that drive. You just finding guys on the sideline to get out of bounds, didn't have to waste any timeouts until they got all the way to the red zone. His poise is years ahead of where you might expect it to be for his age and, it only being year 3. That's what I was most impressed with. And that's the difference between it being a 17-6 game at the half or a 20-6 game and a 24-6, which it was. I mean, that's a huge swing. You're getting the ball to start the second half. That's a huge difference maker in the game. So we saw it a couple times last year, saw it this Sunday. I think that's an area where Lamar is excelling, is 2-minute drills and just great composure leading drives.
What gets me too is a bunch of people that I talk to that aren't Ravens fans, they still refer, and I know some of it's, they're messing with me, but they still refer to Lamar as a running back, which I think is hilarious because he gets no love for anything he does with his arm. The focus has always been on his legs. And whereas a guy like Patrick Mahomes and you watch, a Chiefs game and half the time it's Chris Collinsworth or whoever else it is just slobbering and drooling over how good of a thrower Patrick Mahomes is. And my question to those people is, okay, Lamar's not the same, if you're comparing throwing, I would still consider Mahomes to be a better passer, but Lamar is a damn good thrower and much better than a lot of people ever want to give him credit for. And my question is, if you can have a quarterback between somebody like Patrick Mahomes who can run but isn't necessarily known for it and can't necessarily escape every single hit as pass rushers are going to come to him, or you have a guy like Lamar who makes all these jaw-dropping escapes and runs all the time if guys are coming at him, and oh yeah, he can throw, very well too. I mean, wouldn't you take the guy that can do both every single time?
Yeah. I mean, think about how many big plays last year and then on Sunday even, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but, the pocket's collapsing. He rolls out, creates more time, gives himself time to set and throw. How many big plays were created just by that? And how many quarterbacks just physically can't do that? Like, it's funny now that I think about it, Big Ben, for as fat and slow as he is, always got praised throughout his career for rolling out of the pocket and not running like Lamar might, but giving himself more time to create a big play. Lamar does the same thing. And the more games he's playing, I think you're seeing he's more and more, or I should say less and less eager to take off and run. Like as a rookie, he would roll out and he's tucking the ball and he's going. And you look at like this Sunday, he'll roll out. He's got his eyes downfield. Where can I pass the ball? He's not looking to run unless he has to. And I just don't. It's the same thing that Big Ben does, but Lamar's actually fast and can run, whereas Ben can't. But they're both have the same skill set in extending the play. So I'm with you. It just doesn't make sense.
And yes, he does run. He does run into piles of defenders. He does get hit. We know. Anybody can get hurt doing that, not just a quarterback. Any position player can get hurt doing that. But you know what? I guarantee you over the next month, there's going to be some quarterback who's going to be standing in the pocket and gets an ankle, a leg, a hamstring. Something's going to get tweaked as they get sacked going to the ground. I guarantee that's going to happen to at least one of the 32 teams in the NFL. It can happen to anybody. So that whole argument is, oh, well, how long are the Ravens going to be able to do this, or how what's the word I'm looking? Sustainable is this? Like quarterbacks that don't run all the time can get injured too. Like I'm sick of hearing that argument.
Yeah, I mean, and he's on the team now, but RG3, I feel like if RG3 didn't exist, or at least if he didn't suffer as gruesome of an injury as he did that derailed his momentum and just that exceptional start to his career, if that didn't happen, would people even say this about Lamar? Because I can't think of any other like mobile quarterbacks who have been absolutely derailed by an injury. I mean, I guess Cam Newton, but he's back now and he looked amazing this week, fully healthy, back with the Patriots. They were running him a bunch. He could come back fully from that injury and be fine. I feel like it's the RG3 effect. Like that injury was so nasty, it halted his career as a starter. It's very unfortunate. But if that never happened, would this whole conversation about Lamar getting injured even exist?
Right. Yeah. And I mean, the Patriots, they might have to run Cam more than, they'd like to this season. I mean, I think like the Patriots' fourth or fifth receiver might have been working at Arby's like 2 weeks ago. Like he's got nobody to throw to over there. So like, he's got Edelman and the second-year receiver Harry, but like he has nobody else to throw to. So, I mean that might just be out of necessity. And the Patriots, I mean, they might sign a receiver eventually, but yeah, just going back to the Lamar thing though, like he doesn't get any respect. Maybe some of it has to do with he plays for the Ravens at a small market team. I have no idea, but and obviously this has to continue. This was 1 week, and it is going to be about Lamar being able to win the playoffs until we see it happen. But hey, you can only get to the playoffs if you're dominating in the regular season, and so far that's what the Ravens have been doing. So hats off to them.
So while we're on the subject of Lamar, let's just skip ahead to one of my gripes. Harbaugh deciding to leave him in the game late. They're up 38-6 in the fourth quarter. What are you doing? Take him out. Game's way out of reach. They were exceptional with it last year, taking him out in the fourth quarter when they had a big lead. They did it a bunch last year. You have RG3. You're paying him $2 million. Use him. That's what he's there for. And it didn't make sense to leave him in there. And then on top of that, there was some formations, empty backfield formations late in the game. No running back there. They're having him drop back and pass. It's just unnecessary. There's no excuse for it. I'm thankful nothing happened, but he did take a sack late in the game where some guys were falling on the legs, and you hold your breath. Because, again, I agree with you. That sort of thing can happen to anybody at any time. But if you're up 38-6, let's just eliminate that possibility altogether and get him out of the game.
Right, I agree. And Harbaugh did say, it was either after the game or yesterday, that I don't know if it's true or not, but he was telling the reporters to do their homework basically, because his point was like, if you look at like the history of the NFL, like a lot of coaches will leave their quarterbacks in. Like the idea is, to win the game, and the starters are the starters, and you leave them in. And but you like you were saying, we saw several times last year when they were up by 40 points literally, and they end up taking Jackson out. Part of me, I didn't really mind it as much as I was. The last drive Lamar was in, he definitely should have been out. I agree. But it wasn't bothering me nearly as much as it normally would, because my thought process was, they didn't have any preseason games. And yes, starters don't play much in the preseason, but like this was their first like live action in months. So I think maybe the idea was to get the starters as big of a full game feeling as possible, just because they haven't had that yet. Maybe another possibility is, okay, they know they have two previous AFC division winners from last year coming up on the schedule, and they just want the guys being as ready as they can be. So maybe leave them in a little bit longer than you normally would. But I do agree that being up 38-6 with the game already decided, there's no reason for the starters to still be in there, and especially when Lamar takes off on a run, I turn and look the other way. But I have like a gut feeling that the weird off season and the schedule over the next couple of weeks might have played into it.
I mean, he'll stand by it, and I like that it's his decision as the coach. I don't want him to falter on that. I just was curious what his explanation would be, and I guess it makes sense. You didn't get a tune-up, but all I'm asking is to take Lamar out. You put RG3 in, he can still pass. You could still get some of your receivers some opportunities if you want. But even the concept of, when Lamar was in, dropping back to pass when you're up 38-6. I'm not saying it's bad because it's disrespectful to the Browns or anything, but it's just unnecessary. Like, run the ball, run the clock out, let's get out of here. Why are you dropping back to pass? So is this something you can't work on during the week? I don't know. I mean, I'm not an NFL coach. I never will be. I guess I can't relate to that, but I think the consensus among the fan base is that Lamar should have been out, mostly because, again, they did it like 4 to 5 times last year. Like, this isn't a foreign concept to them.
Yeah, I mean, and I know we talked about like Prochet and the issue he had in the game, but some of the other rookies, especially, the top two, Queen and Dobbins, I mean, they looked as advertised. I know, and I heard some people talking on the radio and on TV that know, light years more of football than I do. And they were saying that, there's still going to be some stuff on the tape that, Queen particularly is going to look at and want to correct. And Harrison, who shined a little bit, he was a little bit more rocky than Queen, but I was really impressed with their top two picks. Yeah, I definitely can get behind the idea of Dobbins, eventually taking away the job from Ingram as the season goes on. But it'll, the Ravens backfield is stacked, so it'll be nice to have all those guys there. With Chris Moore being out and Justice Hill, Duvernay looks like he can be a serviceable kick returner and an option out of the backfield on screen plays and stuff like that. I think, per se, you don't like seeing the punt. And there's going to be some sloppiness too with not having any reps in the preseason and things like that. So I wasn't too shocked that it happened. I wouldn't like to see it happen, but I wasn't surprised that he kind of let one get by him. But yeah, I thought, the rookies overall for their first NFL game with no preseason games went definitely passed. I give him a passing grade for sure. Was it perfect? By no means, but I didn't see anything from the rookies that I didn't think I would normally see, and was particularly impressed with Queen and Dobbins.
Yeah, I was very impressed with just how involved both of them were from the start, Queen and Dobbins. And even Duvernay, I mean, he got involved early, had that one reception for, I'm looking at it now, 12 yards. So that's great. As far as the sloppiness, I mean, I didn't have many notes on this, so I'll just jump in. Like the Prochet, the punt, Pat Ricard with the fumble, stuff like there was a couple plays where I don't know who the running back was, but they would go for the read option and the running back would run and like bump into Lamar because he was going the wrong way. That's stuff that you're right. Like if they had a preseason, we wouldn't see that. So I think that'll disappear quickly, but it was aggravating to say the least. I mean, the most egregious was Ricard with the fumble because it's a turnover that I don't think they're going to be too eager to give him the ball on some carries anytime soon. I thought it was a weird decision to begin with, but especially because you have all these great running backs, but whatever. So as far as the rookies, Dobbins, 7 carries. He was the go-to guy in the red zone, got 2 touchdowns. And, I mean, Ingram only had 10 carries, so pretty even split there in the workload. And then Gus Edwards got 4 late in the game. Neither Ingram or Dobbins was particularly dominant. I mean, both were around 3 yards per carry. But I don't know. I just didn't expect Dobbins to be as involved in week 1. I didn't know what the coaching staff had in store for him. And I guess between not having as much media availability in training camp, no preseason games for us to watch, they were probably able to keep that a hidden secret, like how much they were going to use Dobbins. So I'm excited for him. I'm excited for him to be heavily involved. Happy for him to get those first 2 touchdowns. But, yeah, I mean, just overall the run game as a whole wasn't anything special. And I don't know if that was a concern to you, like the offensive line. They only gave up 2 sacks. Lamar did a good job escaping any other danger. But, you look at how dominant the offensive line was last year, creating rushing lanes and protecting Lamar. Was there any concern for you in week 1 just because Ingram and Dobbins both didn't have great days?
Yeah, that's definitely my biggest concern for the offense and potentially the entire team is the offensive line. I don't think they're going to have a record-breaking rushing season like they did last year. I do think that Lamar Jackson might end up leading the team in rushing yards again this season because you don't have Marshall Yanda anymore. And yes, it's great to have Matt Skura back, but definitely that knee is not 100%. Just the natural timetable that he had coming off the injury and being in recovery and things like that. He might be, 75, 80%, but not 100% Matt Skura. And then you also add into the fact that Ronnie Stanley gets dinged up for the 25th time in his young career and, misses the rest of the game. Every finger and toe is crossed that he's going to play the next 2 weeks. Cause if he doesn't, I think that spells trouble for the Ravens against Houston and Kansas City. But yes, Tyree Phillips, very impressive that he was able to win the job over DJ Fluker and start week 1. But, it's a rookie playing in his first NFL game with no preseason. I mean, I kind of think that says more about Fluker than it does about Phillips, to be honest with you. But hopefully, with playing and getting that experience, Phillips can get better as the season goes on. And we all know he's not going to be Marshall Yanda, but if he turns out to be a decent mid-round or third-round pick, I believe, rookie, maybe some of those short runs start to go a little bit longer. And as Skura's, knee gets a little bit better, maybe we start seeing some of those holes open up. And yes, the Browns do have some talent along the defensive line as well, but I'm not overly concerned because I think the Ravens do such a great job with scheming things up on both sides of the ball. But it is something to monitor is the offensive line. I honestly don't think that the run game is going to be as dominant as it was last year. But hey, if we keep seeing what we saw from Lamar and throwing the ball, they might be able to cover that up a little bit. We'll have to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's not the biggest concern. I think some of it could be chalked up to what we were just talking about with the rookies. The offensive line, this is the first time they played like an actual game alongside each other. No Marshall Yanda. You only had really your, Skura's back, but he's nursing the injury. But you got your tackles is like your only, keystone guys. So it's a little bit of a turnover from last year to this year, but we'll see how it goes. Not the biggest concern. They were good enough. They didn't let through pressure on every single play, and I think the Ravens had like 7 penalties on the day or something. I don't know how many of them were on the offensive line, but off the top of my head, that didn't seem to be an issue, like false starts and stuff like that. So at a bare minimum, I think that's a good thing that they weren't that sloppy, like giving up yards on penalties.
I do think because there's not anybody in the crowd that there's not going to be nearly as many false starts as we normally see. But I did see, going back to observations from watching games, like a bunch of veteran quarterbacks doing like fake snaps and fake counts to try to get the defense to jump off sides, and a lot of them worked. So I think we'll see a lot of that with defenders jumping off sides. I think that's definitely going to be an adjustment. Maybe that decreases as the season goes, but yeah, I don't think there's going to be a lot of false starts this year. Maybe a lot of holding penalties depending on what happens in the games, but it's definitely a lot easier to hear the plays being called for both sides of the ball. That's for sure.
So the other big rookie was Patrick Queen, obviously, and he's just he was in a weird place coming into the season. You're the number 1 pick or first-round pick for the Ravens. There's expectations that come with that, with being a first-round pick. Coming from LSU, a big school like that, a lot of expectations. And I think Ian brought this up last week. It's unfair, but it exists. If you play inside linebacker, middle linebacker in Baltimore, there's unfair expectations because of Ray Lewis. They existed when C.J. Mosley was here. They're going to exist here for Patrick Queen, but we saw it with Mosley. He was pretty damn good for his rookie tenure here, 5 years. He wasn't Ray Lewis, but no one should be Ray Lewis. I mean, Ray Lewis is considered the greatest of all time at that position, if not like top 3. So those expectations are ridiculous. Queen does not have to be Ray Lewis. He just has to be himself. And I was very impressed with him on Sunday. Maybe that was one of the players I was most impressed with, just because being a rookie, that's your first game. You had no preseason. You're coming right in. You're playing, almost 100% of the defensive snaps because you don't have any middle linebacker depth when they drafted you. And, I mean, he shined. First career sack, forced a fumble. It couldn't have been a better day. I think if you're a Ravens fan, I don't know what more you could have wanted out of Patrick Queen for a first game. And as far as that first sack, I saw a couple times Martindale was sending him on a lot of blitz packages up the middle. I don't know if that's something they're going to try to incorporate more this year, because I remember last year I don't think either Bynes or Fort were sent on many blitzes up the middle. Could be wrong about that. It just didn't come to mind. I don't think either of them got many sacks last year at all. So for Queen to already find success in that on game 1, I think that's very interesting, and maybe another wrinkle for this defense in this pass rush is to use the inside linebackers more.
Yeah, Hunter, agree with you 100%. Not expecting Ray Lewis type things out of Queen, but to lead the team in tackles and get a sack in your NFL debut without, much preparation going into it as far as game action goes. You can't complain about that at all. And I do definitely think that he's going to keep getting better as he gets more experience. I also appreciated, him. The CBS during the broadcast had a shot of Patrick Queen and LJ Fort, sitting next to each other on the bench and kind of talking over some things. And they turned, they got a shot of the two, behind the backs of looking at the backs of their jerseys. And I was just, thinking Queen and Fort. That's an interesting last name combination there on the screen. Kind of, fits well together considering that they're, both middle linebackers too. And I mean, LJ Fort is not a perennial Pro Bowler in the NFL, but that's going to be great to have, Malik Harrison and Queen be able to, have a guy like that to talk to, who, has been around the NFL and played for 5 or 6 different teams now. But yeah, very impressed with him. And, I'm expecting once, the weeks go on that we'll start to see more good things from him.
So before we wrap things up with, I guess, like a loose bag of other impressive performances or gripes or whatever, Malik Harrison, just because you mentioned him, not as high of a snap count as Patrick Queen, split his time with LJ Fort, but he had a really nice play. Can't remember what quarter, but he tipped a pass across the middle. Should have been an easy interception for Chuck Clark, but he dropped it. And that it was just an amazing play by Malik Harrison. Great awareness. More so Queen than Harrison, but just watching him like fly around the field, and it just, for this being his first experience with the NFL, like we always hear about it, the NFL is so much faster than college, and even the best rookies that get drafted in the first round, they always say, man, the game is so fast. It took me a while to get adjusted to that. You watch Patrick Queen on Sunday, no NFL preseason, game 1. I mean, he looked like he had been playing, just from like moving around the field, looked like he had been playing 2-3 years. He just, I don't know if that's a testament to LSU, a testament to him, a little bit of both, but I mean, he just did not look like a rookie the way he was moving around the field.
Yeah, and then, you're talking about Harrison's tip ball. I mean, speaking of tip balls too, I mean, Calais Campbell, my God. I mean, he must have gotten Baker Mayfield 3 or 4 times, and Marlon Humphrey was able to get a pick out of one of them. I mean, it's amazing that, he's in his mid-30s now and is still doing what he's doing. I think that's going to be a great addition for the Ravens, front 7 and the defensive line is Calais Campbell too. I mean, really not too much bad. I mean, most of the bad came from, the other team that was in the stadium on Sunday. And there was a lot of it for them, as there normally is. But aside, like we touched on the punt issue, and the Ricard fumble, but I mean, aside from those two, I really didn't. You could talk about the run game not getting going yet. I think that might develop more as the season goes on, even though I have some reservations about the line. And the other negative was Lamar being in longer than he probably should have been. But as far as performances go, I think Harbaugh had him as ready as ever, and that clearly showed. And we'll have to see if the Browns can recover and put some semblance of a successful season together. But didn't start on Sunday for them, that's for sure, after many people thought that it was going to be a close ball game.
Yeah, I mean, Baker was just a non-factor, and I'm not going to say I felt bad for him, but you mentioned Calais Campbell there. I mean, I don't think that even crossed Baker Mayfield's mind that Calais Campbell could ever drop back into coverage. I don't know if Calais has ever done that in his career, but credit to Wink Martindale for calling that up. Because, I mean, Calais was like 4 or 5 yards back. I mean, he was in like middle linebacker territory when he tipped that pass. It's just crazy. I mean, he's a one-man wrecking crew, getting the pass rush, absolutely dominating against the run. I mean, if you're a running back and you run into him, it's over. I mean, it's like hitting a wall. And the tip passes, everything. I mean, he can change a game by himself. So that was just an absolute steal. We knew that coming in on paper, that trade to get him here, but you see him suit up as a Raven for the first time, make all those plays. it's amazing. So credit to DaCosta, credit to Campbell, amazing stuff. And the last good thing I wanted to mention was the secondary as a whole. We knew Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters, those guys are all pro. They're going to be good. Humphrey had the injury scare, but he did come back, so that's great. I mean, I was really holding my breath when he left the field with that one because it did not look good. And if you lose him, that is just a huge loss because, Jimmy Smith, he ended up playing, but there was a little bit of question marks surrounding him when Sunday rolled around. A little bit of was like a back spasm issue. So he ended up playing. And then Tavon Young, he did get, showed up by Njoku on that one play, but you can't be mad. That was just an amazing play by Njoku. And he did have some great plays of his own, Tavon did. So as a whole, the secondary did exactly what we all hoped they would. Shut down a pretty talented receiving core. Landry got his touches in. Njoku had some big plays, the circus catch, the touchdown. But Odell shut down again. And I don't want to, go off on this, but Odell is just so overrated. I'm sick of him. He's not built for the AFC North. He's just too soft. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you feel about him. We obviously don't like him very much because he's on the Browns, but I don't know. I just don't think he's built for the AFC North. And that people were pulling out that tweet that him and Landry had after the Ravens extended Marcus Peters, that they were, seemingly celebrating that Peters was going to be here for another 3-4 years. Peters shut him down and then mocked him right in his face. So Odell's overrated. He has been for a while. Shouldn't be in the AFC North, but I'll take it because every time he plays the Ravens, he's going to get he's going to get clowned every single time.
Yeah, one dysfunctional organization in the Giants to another one in the Browns. So, not too much, not too much good to say there. And, I mentioned earlier, but Odell did not look like he was bringing his own energy on Sunday. That's for sure. I will say full disclosure. And you mentioned the Humphrey, being dinged up. I did full disclosure. I did get rid of my Twitter account a few months ago, but for a fact that anytime a Ravens player got dinged up or injured, I was all over Jeff Zreback's Twitter feed on Safari, getting every update that I could. But yeah, that's pretty much the only use I have for that app now.
Yeah, it did not. We didn't hear anything about him post game. It was more about Ronnie Stanley. That was the other one. But Harbaugh said after the game that Stanley wasn't a serious injury, even though he didn't return to the game. And then we didn't really hear much about Marlon, I don't think. And that would just, obviously he came back and played well. So I don't think that's serious. But Stanley, they definitely need him back. So we'll see as the week progresses what is the report from practice. And then we'll find out ultimately with the full injury report on Friday and then the game time one on Sunday. But not having him out there would be as big of a loss for this team as you can think of. Your left tackle not playing.
Yeah, and I'm expecting the Ravens to come out with a W. Obviously it's still early in the week and a lot can happen, but the Texans couldn't get anything going in the passing game against the Chiefs, and you would anticipate that the Ravens secondary will be able to handle that. And they don't have it's been 2 years since they've had Clowney, but he used to he had a pretty lengthy career there too, and he's not going to be a factor. So if Stanley's out, hopefully Fluker can hold down the fort on the left side or whoever ends up playing there. But yeah, and good to see. And I thought it was kind of strange that Stanley was out pretty much the entire second half and they didn't put him back in. But I think some of that could be attributed to, by the time he did get injured, the game was not over, but pretty close to being over. So maybe that was kind of something. And, he's been known to be a player that's had some, not toughness, but just injury, concerns in the past. So best to, just avoid any further damage for a big guy with an ankle problem.
And one more thing, it almost got lost in the game, or it did get lost in the win, but it was probably the most fired up I was during the game in a bad way. Matt Judon, a roughing the passer penalty. I think at this point, I'm not saying that no one thinks the Ravens should, re-sign him or extend him. There's certainly people out there that would want that. But at this point, he's a decent enough player. Whatever, we know he's not top tier, doesn't have double-digit sacks. I'm not paying him like that. And quite frankly, if this roughing the passer stuff is going to continue, these boneheaded mistakes, again, thankfully it didn't have a big impact on the game, but boy, in the moment was I pissed off because it was not a bad call by the ref. It was a good call.
That's all he did. He had 4 tackles, 2 solo, and 1 for a loss. That's the penalty's all he did, really.
It's just so frustrating. I mean, those penalties kill you. I mean, if it comes at the wrong time in the game, it can absolutely kill you. We saw him do it against the Chiefs. I think it was either last year or the year before. It just stop. Like, hold up. Don't hit the quarterback. There's nothing to be gained there. It's been like a full 3 or 4 seconds, and it's not like you're running full speed either. So I don't know. I mean, even you saw on the play, even like Baker looked up at him like, what are you doing? So, easy call for the ref. Very frustrating. And I'm not trying to beat up on Judon, but it's stuff like that just makes me sit back and say, that's, when it comes time for you to hit free agency and you're asking yourself why the Ravens didn't re-sign you, don't necessarily look at your production on the field. Maybe look more towards stuff like that, because that's easy to avoid. That's not Ravens football, is making stupid mistakes like that. But I'll wrap it up. I've said enough.
Well, if you're going to ask me about if it's between him and Bowser right now, I mean, I guess I would still take Judon because his resume is still more impressive, but Bowser's not far behind him. I will say that.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the funny thing. Bowser did have a sack. The Ravens had 2, Queen with 1, Bowser with the other, which is odd. If you told me the Ravens would have 2 sacks in this game and asked me who it would have been, I would have said Judon and Campbell, or maybe both came from Campbell. But they got 1 from a rookie and 1 from Tyus Bowser, of all people. So I don't know. It's contract year for Bowser as well. Is he going to fall in line with all these other Ravens defenders that just absolutely ball out in a contract year? I don't know. I'll take it, though, because the Ravens could certainly use it. But as of right now, I'm not re-signing either of them. I mean, unless Bowser is just so cheap to retain and you need him from a depth standpoint, maybe. But I'm not re-signing Judon, and I'm not giving Bowser money. So it's going to be something they have to address in the draft, but it's just the way it is. I mean, you don't have to feel guilted into paying one just because you don't have depth. That's a big mistake. I mean, they could have made the same mistake with C.J. Mosley. They had no depth at inside linebacker, and they chose not to pay him anyway. So ultimately, it was the right decision, and that's all there is.
Yep, 100%. Just wanted to mention or throw that in there about Bowser because we're saying about Judon possibly not being the long-term answer there. So yeah, that definitely will be an interesting thing to watch throughout the year for sure.
All right, that's going to do it for episode 119. Might have another one for you this weekend, a full formal preview with Ian. We'll see. I'll save my full prediction for that. But if we don't somehow do that, I am predicting a Ravens win, and pretty convincingly as well. And I don't think that I'm just too high on them right now.
He's drinking the purple Kool-Aid, everybody. He's drinking the purple Kool-Aid again.
Hey, I mean, after last year and week 1 this year, how could I not?
Yeah, I mean, it's strange to talk about the Ravens losing. I mean, it really is. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what the picks are like next week. But yeah, I mean, most weeks now you're expecting a W.
Appreciate you guys listening. As always, going to try to do more of these recaps earlier in the week so you don't have to wait all the way until Saturday for a recap of the previous game. And hopefully we'll have Jake on more throughout the season. This was fun. Good to have you back. And just looking forward to more Ravens football.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Like I said at the beginning of the show at the top, I appreciate you extending the invitation for me to hop back on here. It's good to get back into it from afar.